So next we have Anna Brown, who comes to us from Massey University. She's the director of Toi Aria, which is Centre for Social Good. Anna is a very accomplished designer and has been working as a design-focused researcher and consultant. Would that be right, Anna? For a while. I know her well, and she has she's a very capable communicator about design, the practice of design. And I was really lucky to work with her on this particular case study in Masterton. I'll pass over to you, Anna.
Kia ora, Sophie, thank you. And kia ora, Jade and Becky, for your previous conversations. They're really fascinating. I'm thrilled to be here today, and thanks for having me, Sophie. And I'm doing this talk really on behalf of Sophie and myself, and actually a collaborator on this project who's on this call, Siv. So it's really a collective piece, but I'm talking to it. I might just start with my mihi. So tēnā koutou ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi no ponoki o ko ahumairangi te maunga ko te whanganui atara te moana no te kuninga ki puri hurua o ko Anna Brown toko ingoa tēnā koutou. So I am going to share with you my screen, and I'm apologising in advance because this is going to be a slight Pecha Kucha-like thing because I have a lot to show you, and part of doing this is to show you so that you can see what we did, and then I can talk about our reflections, our sort of collective reflections on this project. So can everyone see a black screen? All right, here we go. So I named this Fighting for Space, a small town participatory planning case study. And in particular, I think it's important for me to position this for you because really Masterton was not in an emergency in a literal sense. So it didn't really fit this model so much. And it doesn't have sort of although I'm going to talk slightly about the COVID-19 emergency, it's really not about that. But actually there was an emergency when we started there in 2016, and that was around the economy of the place, and something which Sophie and I named a condition of stagnancy. And that's not overstating anything, I don't think. In 2016, there were 21,000 people in Masterton, and that hadn't changed for around 20 or so years. There was also a very well known and understood racial divide between the east and west of Masterton, and really this crisis of redundancy going on around all of New Zealand, around small towns, and what's happening in small towns that are losing small business owners and operators to bigger conglomerates like the warehouse. How do you cope with that? So are my screens changing for everybody? Just checking. So to say, what would it look like? No, okay, I'm just going to go out of my full screen because it doesn't seem to work. Can you see what would it look like now? Great, so we started off with this project with some speculations of really what would this process look like if we were doing it genuinely with the community. What would it look like if Māori could have as much presence and voice as Pākehā? What would it look like if youth were engaged as well as adults? And what if public engagement could be united in the sense that it was a united voice, a united vision and hopes? These were speculations and perhaps quite naive ones when we started out. And actually when we reflect on this, there is an element of naivety, which I'll talk a little bit about more. But to take you through what we did is more important in the first instance. I'm just going to make this a little smaller so you can see it. So this is the project. This was a 2-year project which had a single vision to enable a collective community-led design strategy for the Masterton CBD and its connections to the wider process of Masterton. And it was quite complex and had many participant parts, which was part of its strength in many ways. So it started with a conversation with myself and the then Chief Executive of the Masterton District Council. I quickly just knew that this project was bigger than I could ever deliver, and so I spoke with Sophie about letting space and Urban Dream Brokerage coming on board. We then were very lucky to have UNICEF come on board and the council, and this is really a conversation about relationships. So if it started with the District Council, it grew into a much bigger thing. But actually, what I've always said is that it grew a heart when we engaged with Te Pātokitoki o Wairarapa. So Wairarapa is a very interesting place because it has two iwi. It has Rangitāne o Wairarapa and Ngāti Kahungunu, both strong in their own right. But Te Pātokitoki delivers for both iwi and for the community. And so as an organisation to connect with, it had great potential to do a lot of the engagement across a wider community than we could. So what we went through is a process of community engagement which involved workshops. And this, again, some of the workshops we did with 50 people at the golf club. There were a lot of mistakes in this process of how we started and where we started. But this is where we started. 50 people, one Māori in the room at this workshop. I think this is a wonderful sense visually of how it felt. Can you see everyone with their hands on their chins looking perplexed about what they were being asked to do? Then we went, we learnt from that and we thought, okay, we need to widen our engagement and we really need to connect with the local iwi. So we did a workshop at the marae and with UCOL. And then we did another one at Atrium where we got a lot of people, 100 people turned up on the night, which was quite surprising. But again, you'll see the kind of people in the room. So we weren't really delivering on our hope at this point. But through those first workshops, we developed this future Masterton framework, which was citizen-led, and it had these principles at its heart. So a set of strategic principles, which was a commitment to a shared vision that was sustainable, environmental, economic and social and cultural, and with a set of physical design principles, which I'll talk a little bit to now. And as part of this was also a community hub, which we hosted, or we were hosted by Te Pātokitoki, and that actually involved us helping them, I guess, giving it a freshen up. And this is some visualizations of that. Again, when I look at this, a lot of our children in this community hub at this point, and it's still very much Pākehā-led and Pākehā-dominated. But, you know, it was a start. And this hub was around engaging the community to come in and talk about what they wanted for their CBD. And it had some success. There were people coming in and providing their voice and putting their ideas around what the community would like to see in their city. And you'll see lovely engagement from younger and older communities, from diverse communities. And then the second time this project really took off was when UNICEF came on. It always helped to have funding. They funded us to engage with 9 schools to ask the youth what they also wanted for Masterton. And this is again, sorry, Petracucha-esque here. These are some of the things that the young people of Masterton told us. They said, we want our cities to be able to be pedestrianised. We want young people with places to play and be active. We want community gardens. We want greenery in our city. We want youth spaces. There are no places for young people to live and play and be activated in the centre. We want Queen Street to be a dynamic place where people want to hang out, not just for cars. And so alongside of that, the Urban Dream Brokerage was helping with some empty spaces and to invigorate and energise those spaces. And these are some of the visualisations of that. So there was a block party, a set of shops on a block coming together on a specific date to pedestrianise streets and really engage, which was a wonderful environment. There was music. There was a wonderful, Paul Bird came together and he did some invigorating of cloth and material and space. Masterton and Me by Anna Rutherford, so photos of people in place in the space of Masterton. Siv's amazing nature trails through Masterton. And so again, just to sort of let you know all the things that happened, and what the people of Masterton told us is they wanted culture and heritage in their space. They wanted the urban nature integrated into the environment. They wanted well-connected public spaces for all, arts, recreation and business growth, and really less cars and more pedestrian ability. These are not unusual things wanted for small towns or any towns. And so what we did was did some 50-year visualizations of what it might look like. And these were with a young architectural graduate. They were really about speculating on what it could be. One of the things I suggest you look at is how many trees are here, because this is something that's sort of followed through into the actions that have happened now. So you see trees, the idea of physical spaces for people, places to sit, water fountains was one of the other things, how a new library might look. And the way we did this, they were deliberately non-formalised drawings. They were rough and ready. This was one of my favourite moments when we presented midpoint in the project to the council around how Queen Street might look. And the two things that you might see in this picture, one is dogs and the other is skateboards, two things which are not allowed in Masterton CBD. And they were the only things that they could talk about at that point. But also making sure that the councillors understood that what we were talking about was from the people. And so these were people's own words being shown and represented back to the District Council. Park Street, which I'll come back to, a strange street that connects the Queen Elizabeth Park through to the centre of town, which has really had one of the more energetic ways of engaging. Again, what people wanted, pedestrianisation, bikes, recognising Māori heritage through naming and po, and thinking about community involvement and how people would have places to sit. So this is the project, 2 years. We did 4 workshops. We had those principles for engagement. We initiated 6 community projects, 9 schools, and this really growing sense of relationships between property owners, creators, mana whenua and the council, and the pop-up, community pop-up. So that's a flash by of what we did. And now I wanted to reflect a little on what's happened since, because we did this work between 2016 and 2018. And then as part of these projects, you come in and you leave, but really that's the worst part of it. What you want is to energise and invigorate the people of that place to carry on the work. And so recently, Sophie and I interviewed AJ, who's on the council still, to ask her what she had seen that's followed through. But just a moment before that, in between these projects, there was this article in the Listener, and I'm just going to read to you this piece, which might explain what happened with Park Street. So this is called Parks and Consternation. Parklets are a month-long experiment and part of a broader rejuvenation plan to inject more life and vibrancy into Masterton Centre by connecting bits of it and giving people more places to feel well, alive and vibrant. It must be the most controversial parklet in history. You can shoot basketball hoops under the blazing hot sun, ride your skateboard or scooter over crappy wooden jumps under the blazing hot sun, or play games of giant chess, noughts and crosses or Jenga under the blazing hot sun, all of which, apart from the blazing hot sun, seem naff but hardly offensive, though not to a couple of nearby businesses and not for many Facebook readers. So this small parklet intervention, which happened after our project, and actually was the young architectural graduate who was employed to do it, really didn't work and actually got a lot of heckles up in the community. And I guess for a while that was the taste that was left in my mouth through this process. Just go to the next page. So really what has happened since then, and really what is this all about? Because I would say there's, when we're speculating and thinking about what places might be, really the key thing we need to ask is what is the actions that have happened? And I said earlier that there was a sense of naivety from us. Some of that was an enthusiasm and hope for what we might be able to change and what we might be able to bring about. But that is always put aside with the reality of how slow change can be in these places and what the issues of political engagement and political changes. And so when we spoke to AJ, who's at the council, she said, since we've left, 50% of those people on the council when we were there have turned over. And what we have now on the council is 4 females, one of whom is the mayor, and 11 older Pākehā men. There are 2 Māori iwi representatives on the council with non-voting rights. So actually, since 2016, not much has changed in that space. What I do think is that while we went there to invigorate space, actually much of the mahi that we were doing was invigorating people and how they could come into empty spaces and be enabled through some funding or through access to place. And this is a process of shifting power and thinking about how power is altered to enable community in different places. Sometimes it's about formalising power, so enabling Māori representation between Te Patuki in the council and a consistent and engaged element in the council offering. And then, of course, recognising power. Well, what is it that the two iwi need in this space? How do we let their voices be heard? How do we open spaces of power for them? And so I think there are traces of success in this project. Now, this is a picture of Te Pā, as it's called now, not so long ago. You'll see that the colours have changed and it's owned more by the Māori and cultural community of Masterton. And when we spoke to AJ, she said that this is a place that is flourishing and flying, that it's beautiful, that the artworks that are happening in this space and the openness for the community has really been energised. And following on from that, since we've been there, Boffa Miskell have been asked to draw up more formalised plans. This is the Queen Street plan. Now for us, for Sophie and I, hearing AJ telling us that what the council were trying to do through these plans were greening lower Queen Street, enabling active play, enabling public spaces and flexible spaces, finding places for youth without cars, respecting the environment and enabling pedestrian space. There's this moment where you think, I'm hearing the things that the community told us coming out of someone who's on the council. So something is still there. There are traces of this work with the community coming through into these visualizations. What AJ also said to us is actually the biggest thing around this is it's also part funded by the New Zealand Transport Authority, and much of it is around greening of the space. There is many trees being visualized in this, and there's still cars on streets. So what I would say from this is that it's slow. These things are not fast, but there is a commitment from the council that in the next 3 years that there is money put into these engagements. One of the things that has not yet been agreed to by the council is the engagement in Park Street. And on reflection, I'm wondering if Greg Dixon's article in the Listener hasn't helped that. But Park Street is more, has this wow component in it that this Queen Street piece doesn't have, and it's thinking about pedestrianising space and really engaging it in a different way. But it's too much yet for the council. And this is the Park Street plan, fewer car parks, which is always a huge thing for the community, for the vocal community of Masterton. And so one of the things that AJ said, she described this process. She said, you know, really we started with conversation and we built a set of relationships which led to authentic engagement and the sense that I care about you and your whānau. She also said, I'm just going to read it to you, the thing that I hold within me all the time is how do I take the people that I'm now working with on this journey. We took our community on this journey, and then what? How are we authentic back? The community told us all these things, but what do we say now? Thanks, we're not listening. So there are risks in this kind of work. But in fact, she's the one holding a lot of these principles to the council. Yes, my reflection on this is actually, I'm not sure that the way she described it is the way to do it, because I actually think authentic engagement starts with strong relationships. And you build on them, and through those relationships you develop processes of conversation, and then you collectively talk about how you might care for each other and the world. And so that's a shift. And that's probably enough. There was a lot in there. I hope that wasn't too fast, but thank you. And any questions?
Thanks, Anna. I just wanted to note that the Kay, Roger just wanted to point out that AJ is a council officer.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure. No, just to be clear for everyone to know that she's not someone who's being elected in and out, and that's great, as you say, it's good that she's still there over the time. And that Kay is also noticing.
Oh yeah.
No shelter would exclude older pedestrians. So that, just also to be clear, that parklet was nothing to do with the designs that you drew up, right? The parklet that...
No, it was an experiment by the council that wasn't funded to the extent it needed to be. And it was them, and I guess, dipping their toes in the water on how you might engage in this space. But it obviously wasn't successful for the community, and it raised heckles. And I guess it's really about being, having good intentions and committed resources to this kind of engagement that allows community concepts to flourish when you're designing these urban environments.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of co-design as far as we're aware, right?
No, not at that point.
Tam, no, who's got anyone got a question for Anna?
Yeah. Oh, actually, if there's no questions quite yet, one thing I did want to talk about was a reflection by AJ when we interviewed her about COVID-19 and how the community had responded to that. And she did talk about how a health-led response in their community kind of came in and didn't think about people and place and relationships to the extent that it could have. And in fact, when we're leading with health responses in this environment, if we work with the community to understand where you might position testing stations and where you think about and how you think about putting things in environments that are enabling the community and strengthening them. So for Masterton, the initial testing stations were put in the east, which is the poorer side of town, and those communities said, so what are you saying to us, that we're sick and that this is the place that you need to test things? And I guess the point here is, if you work with those people who are already in places, that you are able to do this engagement in a way that is caring of the approaches that people need to respond with high trust in the environments.
Thank you. Just to keep time, I think we should keep any more questions for the end, somewhere that everyone's got things to go to. But thank you so much, Anna. It was a really nice overview too of the kind of before and after, and the disappointment actually that occurred too.
Yeah, it's never a single picture, is it? It's always much more murkier, but much more real and human, this work.
Yeah, and privileged to get to know those awesome people who are in Masterton, as well.